What's going on, YouTube? This is Boxingwave, and we are back with another fight breakdown. This time it's going to be for Undisputed at 135 at lightweight. Devin Haney is going to defend all four major titles against Vasyl Lomachenko, and it's going down on May 20th. It's going to be a top-ranked ESPN pay-per-view with a $59.99 price tag. Okay, and I should be here doing live commentary for that fight. All right. Before we get started with all the technicalities on what these fighters need to do to win the fight, let's talk a little bit about the history of this fight and how we got here. There's a lot of history between these two, between the fans, between the two fighters, with the politics and the organizations. So we're going to just briefly touch on that, on how we got to this fight. Okay, it starts all the way back to 2019, before the pandemic, when Vasyl Lomachenko fought Luke Campbell for a 3-belt unification match. Now, at that time, Loma had 2 belts. Campbell didn't have any. But the WBC vacant title, the WBC Super D major title, was on the line. It was vacated at that time, and those two fought for the titles. Lomachenko won the fight. Okay, but at that time, in that same year, Devin Haney was already the WBC world champion. So he was 1 under, meaning he would get first digs. He would be the mandatory to fight for that title very soon. Remember, Devin Haney and Luke Campbell was supposed to originally fight for that title, but Lomachenko, being that he was already a unified champ, got the chance to fight for the title instead. All right, Devin Haney went on to defend the regular WBC title against, I believe, Santiago that year. And I think he had a little injury between that, and I think he had like a shoulder surgery, correct me if I'm wrong. And that was that. Now, this is where all the controversy began. WC elevated Lomachenko to franchise champion, which basically means this is simply a WBC thing. He didn't have to be concerned about mandatory obligation. As the WBC franchise champion, right, he can fight who he wants without having to worry about getting stripped. He could go to different divisions. They had all these rules where it basically meant you will remain champion. It wasn't even transferable if we're judging by the original rules of franchise title when they elevated Canelo for that previously. So instead of fighting Devin Haney, who was the Mando for that time, right? Instead of that, basically, he went on to unify with Teofimo Lopez, who at that time had just beat Richard Coleman. He knocked him out in 2 rounds. And Teo was he held the last title, the major title, at lightweight at that time. So Loma and Teo went to fight each other. Meanwhile, Devin Haney was basically robbed of his, mandatory opportunity. Now, this was the argument. Mauricio Solomon, this is the president of WBC, he basically comes out and said Devin Haney and his team had the opportunity to petition. All right, so when they set this rule for franchise, he came out and said that Devin Haney did not petition for the belt. So there was an opportunity where he could have fought and forced that fight to happen. But Team Devin Haney, of course, according to Mauricio Solomon, said that they didn't petition for it. So in that time, there was an argument on whether or not it's Loma's fault for going to face Teofimo Lopez and unifying with him, or should have Devin Haney just petitioned for the belt for the fight and took the fight anyway. All right. But that is all in the past. We are here. There was a lot of blaming going on, and there's a lot that's happened. Of course, Vasyl Lomachenko lost the fight to Teofimo Lopez. But Teofimo Lopez and even George Kambosos, who beat Teo after, they were never really solely considered to be undisputed, because Devin Haney continued to defend that regular WBC title. I know the WBC title was elevated with him, but it was just the franchise title was originally the top tier belt. It's a lot of confusion, but Devin Haney went on to defend his titles against Yuriorkis Gamboa, against Joseph Diaz. He beat Kambosos, which was actually considered to be undisputed officially. All right, and it went on to defend it in the rematch against Kambosos and beating him to a decision again. So now we are here. We are here, and it's been a few years, and things have changed dramatically. Devin Haney is officially undisputed, and he has defended the titles. And you have Lomachenko that is coming gunning for his shot. Since the loss to Teofimo Lopez, he's picked up a few wins. He beat Nakatani. He beat Comey. He beat Jermaine Ortiz. So he picked up a few wins since then, and now we are here. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what these fighters need to do in order to win this fight. And I'm going to start with the challenger, Vasyl Lomachenko, okay? Loma is 35 years old now. He's older now. He's older. And he's still been active over the years, though. Even since that loss to Teofimo Lopez, he had his surgery. And he's been picking up wins. Like I said, he's picked up a few wins since that loss. He's fought every year. Now, there was a period where he didn't fight because of all the things that was going on with the Ukraine. So in 2022, most of that year, he did not fight. But he did fight late in the year against Jermaine Ortiz, which gave him the opportunity to fight for this title shot, to get this title shot here. But yeah, he's 35 years old, 17 wins, 11 losses, 2 defeats. No draws. Now, the thing about those defeats, a lot of his supporters, his hardcore supporters, don't really count those losses. They feel that because he was cheated with the amount of low blows to Orlando Salido. A lot of people don't really give Salido the credit for that win because the amount of low blows in that fight. And then when you have the fight with Teofimo Lopez, even if you believe to them, if you think that he won the fight, it's because Loma was injured. He wasn't 100%. And some people even think that it was either a draw or Loma edged the fight or whatever. I don't think so. But a lot of his fans feel that he doesn't have a legitimate loss on his record. All right. So 35 years, Loma, what can he bring to the table? As far as film study, he's fighting Devin Haney. He's an orthodox fighter. He's a rangy fighter. It's not the first time Vasyl fought a fighter that has some of the qualities that Devin Haney has. A lot of people talk about Devin Haney's size and why he should win because of the size, right? The big size advantage he has. When you saw them standing next to each other, you saw the size. It's not just the height, but it's just the broader shoulders, just a naturally bigger man. Devin Haney he's fought at 135 his whole career, and he's at the stage now where he's too big for 135, all right? He's draining himself to make weight, but he wants to remain at 135. He likes the amount of money that's at 135. And this is what he said out of his own mouth. And plus, he's undisputed there. So he's probably looking for a great opportunity, a big money payday, Tank Davis, while still down at this division. All right. So Lomachenko, people are not giving him as much of a chance here because the fact that he's small, and not for nothing, Loma has struggled a little bit being at lightweight. I felt like before this, outside of the Salido fight, he was pretty much dominant against all of the fighters he faced at 126 and 130, beating guys like Gary Russell Jr., who continued to be a top tier fighter, beating guys and making, Nicholas Walters retire, and going on and beating other good, solid fighters. And when he came to 135, that's when things began to change because now he's fighting naturally bigger guys that were also powerful, also quick, and at the time, fighters, the more fights you have, people get chances to look at your weaknesses and your flaws in your game and pick up on those weaknesses. The more fights you have where you struggle a little bit, that's what happened. And he ran into Jorge Linares, which he stopped Linares, but he was able to, he got dropped in that fight, all right? He got hurt. He got hit with a couple of shots that buzzed him too in that fight, all right? And then, he beat Pedraza, but it was another tough fight. Pedraza, Crolla was an easy fight. Luke Campbell, tough fight, but, he was able to drop him in the fight and put the pressure on Luke. Did well against Luke, but when he fought Teofimo Lopez, it was a different kind of fight because Luke Lopez was able to back him down for most of the fight. I think Lopez was up the first 7 rounds, pretty ahead in the first 7, but Lomachenko was able to rally on in the later rounds, but it just wasn't enough, and he lost the decision. And I thought it was a fair decision, in my opinion. I thought I scored it maybe 7 or 8 rounds to 4, something like that. All right. At the very least, I think Teofimo Lopez won 7 of those rounds, at least 7, if not 8, but 7. All right. And then he came back for Nakatani, tall, rangy fighter, but was able to stop him. For Kome, rugged fighter. We know how Kome gets down. Could have stopped him, but he didn't because that's a friend of his. I think he took his foot off the gas in a Kome fight and then fought Jermaine Ortiz, which most of my film study evolved around that particular fight because Jermaine Ortiz, young fighter, fresh fighter, knows how to control distance, has quick hands, has a good jab. And is taller and like around the same size as Devin Haney. So I felt like that was the perfect fight to really watch because I think that Loma, outside of the Teofimo Lopez fight, I felt like Loma had the most trouble in this fight here because Jermaine Ortiz, I actually think the fight was much closer. I think Jermaine Ortiz at the very least to me, won 5 of those rounds, regardless of how the judges scored it. I personally think the fight should have been closer on the cards. 116-112, 117-111, 115-113, all unanimous for Lomachenko. I agree with the 115-113, but the other 2 cards I think were too wide for this fight. I think it was a very debatable fight in my opinion. All right, but it is what it is. I'm not mad at the decision of him winning though. All right, but now we're here. And Loma, key things. The pressure. The thing is with Lomachenko, we don't know how these fighters are going to deal with Lomachenko and his pressure. His type of pressure is not just high volume, all right? It's just him always stalking, always in your face, coming in, stepping in, using different angles, not always throwing punches, more like staying on you until he's ready to explode. You don't know when he's going to do it. Usually it's not that early. Early, he's trying to get as much information about you as possible. And then the later rounds, he comes on strong. Lomachenko always finished the fight strong. Even as his older self, Jermaine Ortiz, I felt it was up earlier in the earlier rounds. But Lomachenko in the championship rounds, once the 9th round starts, that's when the fight really begins for Vasyl Lomachenko. He's just getting warmed up while you're tired and drained. The one issue is Lomachenko gives up too many rounds early. Part of the reason why Teofimo won that fight. All right, so Loma is coming at you, sending pressure. He has the angles, he has the speed, he has the agility, he has the overall athleticism. He is one of those freakish type athletes in this just generation. There was a point where he was just so hard to hit for most of these fighters, plus his footwork's being able to step around his opponents and confuse them. The more flat-footed fighters like a Nicholas Walters, he was making them quit because they just could not hit him and they kept getting hit. And Loma is not a one-punch power type of guy. He gets his power from combination. He mixes his power with his light punches. You know what I'm saying? So Loma is not necessarily trying to knock you out with one punch. He has knocked people out. I think he did what was that fighter a long time ago where he Roman Martinez. Yeah, I remember he knocked him out, laid out right on his back years ago. All right. But he's at a different level, and he hasn't really been able to do that. But Loma is giving you everything. He's giving you body shots. He's giving you the punch variety is all over the place. He's not looking to throw the same punch. He don't have a signature punch. He's giving you hooks. He's giving you combinations. He's giving you counters. He's doing all of that stuff. But mainly, Loma needs to come straight at you. He's not the type of guy that really fights on his back foot. It's the type of guy that kind of like just swarms you, continuously resetting himself in order to come in and look for the angles and opportunities to get in and land the shots. But mainly the key thing with him is finishing you off in the later rounds. All right. So as far as Loma winning the fight, use those angles, uh, the feinting, the level changing, all of that. Devin Haney is going to be trying to maintain a distance. He's a taller, longer, ragier fighter. Devin Haney has about 1.5 inches over Loma in height. He has about 5 inches in reach over Lomachenko, and plus he's naturally the bigger guy, so he's going to keep you on the outside. He has a phenomenal jab, so Loma's going to have to use those angles to slip Haney and counter. All right, counter him with your jab, your lead hand. Counter him with your jab. All right, step in, counter him with your left hook, or I'm sorry, your right hook. And step in and start to work, shoot those left hands to the body, give them uppercuts, give them all kind of punch variants that we're normally used to seeing you doing. It's just that when, as far as conditioning, Loma has to be top tier, because being that he is getting older, it's starting to show a little bit. And when you're one of these super athletic guys like a Tyson or Roy Jones or Manny Pacquiao and stuff, now you got to rely more on your fundamentals and not just being quick, fast, and explosive, because now you're fighting guys that are also quick and fast and know how to deal with you from a longer period of time. Now when he beat Jermaine Ortiz, it was he finished strong, but Jermaine Ortiz had never went 12 rounds in a professional fight before. I think the most he went was 10 rounds, but most of his fights, he just didn't have the experience of that. Devin Haney, on the other hand, has gone 12 rounds, and the majority of his last 7-8 fights or so, he's always going to the distance since he elevated up in opposition. So he's used to going the distance and looking strong. Yeah, there were some fights where he didn't look as strong. I think in the Linares fight, he did get hurt late. In the Joseph Diaz fight, Joseph did finish kind of strong. But, for the most part, Devin Haney was still strong in the later rounds of his fights. All right, so it might not work. So for Lomachenko, he has to keep the pressure going, but he can't waste as many punches. What I saw in the Jermaine Ortiz, I seen him missing a lot of shots. All right, I'm seeing him get hit more and getting countered more. Sometimes he falls asleep at the wheel. Sometimes he's coming straight forward and forgets to have his hands up. All right, most of the time he's fighting out of the high guard, but it's very, very active. He's doing a lot with his leaf hands. He's trying to confuse you. He's parrying with it. He's probing with it. He's changed level. He's ducking on and down and up and moving to the side, and he's doing a lot of stuff. But in this fight with Jermaine Ortiz, I seen him getting hit more than what we normally see him get hit. And I'm also seeing him jump stepping and missing shots and lunging in sometimes and getting caught with hooks while he's rushing straight in. Sometimes, again, he falls asleep at the wheel and forget while he's pressuring to keep them hands up. And, the slipping and the reflexes, the cat-like reflexes, they're still there. They're still sharp. But I seen when it was better than that. I think they were better at 126, at 130. Maybe his first couple of fights at 135. All right, and he's finding another quick fighter that is good at keeping the range. And in my opinion, is even better than Jermaine Ortiz. Okay, Jermaine Ortiz has very, very fast hands. He throws a lot of jabs. But Haney is more of a prober, especially when he's fighting southpaws. All right, don't waste too many punches. You need to be strong in the later rounds, but try to give us a little consistency. Don't give away too many rounds early. All right. Another thing is when Haney likes to, duck and pivot out of danger and kind of escape, cut him off. If he's at the ropes, if you're coming forward, try to come forward. If you're coming forward on him, cut him off when he's moving and he's moving to the side. Cut him off. You want to stay in his face because, again, we don't know how I'm going to get to Devin Haney in a second. We don't know how Devin Haney is going to deal with Loma's type of pressure. We can all watch this film study and stuff, but we don't know how Haney is going to handle it. Because everybody handles it differently. Jermaine Ortiz, in my opinion, did a great job. All right, it still wasn't enough, but it was a great job. But Devin Haney might either do better than him, or he might not deal with it as much. He might have issues with it. He might feel overwhelmed. He might get forced into having to tie up and clinch a lot, which I'm going to address too in this breakdown. So we don't really know. We just got to wait until the fight begins and watch it and go from there. All right. Ball roll. Another thing too. One last point. Haney likes to, be an orthodox fighter, using that shoulder roll. Likes to duck to his right sometimes. Shoot the straight left hand or the hook to the. Throw it low. Throw it low. When Devin Haney is leaning to his right, throw it low. May catch him, similar to how Jamel Charlo caught Erickson Lubin that year. I always bring that fight up. Throw that hook low, because Devin Haney is going to be looking to slip it and lean and duck underneath it. Duck it low. Throw it low. Throw the hook low so you can catch him as he's going down. You might not. You never know. Sometimes Haney is not good with keeping his hands up. And sometimes he gets hit clean. So with that being said, those are all the key things I feel like Loma needs to do in order to win this fight. Now, when it comes to Devin Haney, he's a taller fighter. He's young. He's fresh. He's 24 years old, 29 wins with 15 knockouts, okay? No losses, no draws. And, he's taller, he's rangier, all of these things that I said. The thing is, with Devin Haney, he's used to going the distance. He's used to being there and winning fights on points. And I don't think we see a knockout in this fight from either side. He's more about the fundamentals. He's quick. He just knows how to, keep you on the end of his jab. He has a phenomenal jab, like I said. He has good speed, good timing, solid defense. And he's a very well-rounded, balanced fighter. I was saying this about Ryan and in a breakdown last week that I did against Tank. And I was saying, it's not for nothing. Ryan is very explosive. He has a phenomenal hook. He has a great straight right hand, and he has a lot of power. But he doesn't really have the fundamentals or the experience yet to beat Tank. And we saw that in the fight. You have one or two major weapons, and you're just relying simply on that. Where Devin Haney's opposite. Devin Haney's punch selection is all over the place. You don't know what he's going to do. You don't know what punch he's going to throw. He's going to throw combinations, but you don't know what he's going to start with. You don't know, because he doesn't have one or two punches, and he doesn't do the same thing over and over. He's always keeping you thinking. And I said this about Ryan. The guys that got knocked out by Tank, Ryan, Rolly Romero, Leo Santa Cruz. The problem with those three mainly is because before they got knocked out, they did something repeatedly where Tank was able to time it and get it. And that's the type of fighter that Lomachenko is, even to a higher level, because all he does is get information on you before the attack. The first, few rounds, he's just taking it easy. He might catch you with a few shots, just enough to win the rounds and secure the rounds. But he's just trying to get information on you. He's just collecting data on you. So Haney is going to be more difficult, because one thing we do know is that he's going to try to keep the distance. But what we don't know is what combo, what punch variation he's going to throw, because he's always changing it up. You know what I mean? So Devin Haney, even though he can fight great on his back foot, fight coming forward, make Loma go backwards, force him to go backwards. All right, because then he'll constantly have to keep resetting and using lateral movement. He don't want to fight backwards. He wants to come forward and pressure you and make you have to retreat. He likes to stalk you. That's when he's on his A game. But when he's constantly being forced to go backwards, you're going to put him in a space where if he goes enough rounds where him and his camp feel like they're not winning and they're not picking up enough rounds, then he starts to move in and attack a little recklessly like he did against Teal. And even though he had success because Teal was tired, it's dangerous because you start going and getting counter and you start lunging and forcing yourself into shots. So Devin Haney needs to do his best to try to make Loma fight on his back foot. But that's not what Loma wants to do. Not saying he can't do it at all. What I'm saying is that's not the fight. That's not when he's at his best. So you want to force him to move back and keep the pressure, keep that jab. Now, Devin Haney, and I don't want to miss it because this is a huge point. Film study, Joseph Diaz Jr. I went back and watched the Joseph Diaz Jr. fight, a couple fights this past week, a couple times. I feel like that's the fight that I needed to watch because he doesn't have any experience with southpaws like that, at least not from a pro level. All right, not sparring, not none of that. Obviously he has sparring out there with Shakur and all that, but I'm talking about in his professional fight, Joseph Diaz Jr. And we know Joseph Diaz Jr. doesn't fight anything like Lomachenko. And this is what I mean by how fighters are gonna deal with Loma when they actually face him, because everybody don't deal with him the same way, especially if you don't have the experience of fighting southpaws and southpaws like him, right? So, with that being said, I watched the Joseph Diaz fight. Probably Haney's most action-packed fight as far as his most recent fight at the highest level. Because in that fight there, wasn't much tying up, wasn't much clinching. Devin Haney does clinch a lot. He did clinch a lot in both Kambosos fights. Didn't clinch a lot there. It seems like he was doing a great job controlling this, is doing fine. What I liked about Haney in that fight is that we seen more power, less jabs, more probing, setting up the right hand, setting up the left hook. I like the power. He was sitting down his punches better, He was relying more on his power shots in that fight. The problem with Devin Haney is once there was a period in that fight, maybe halfway through the fight, where he gave up the range. Joseph Diaz was in range too easily, too much, and it made for it to be a good fight because Joseph Diaz started landing some heavy shots. But at the same time, for Haney on the defensive end, he was getting hit with bigger shots. I feel like Devin Haney lost more rounds in that fight than I've seen him in a previous fight. I gave Joseph Diaz maybe 4 rounds. I don't think I've given Kambosos 4 rounds in either fight. And that goes for everybody. Let me just pull up his resume real quick. Linares was able to hurt him, but I don't think I gave Linares 4 rounds. I think I might have given him 3. Right? I think Kambosos, in both fights I gave him 2, maybe 3 rounds. I think the first one was even wider. I can't remember. I didn't go back and watch too much of both fights. Santiago was a good fight. It was a good competitive fight. But, before that, Haney has been pretty dominant, and he's been winning the majority of the rounds in every single fight. So I feel like Joseph Diaz, got about 4 rounds, maybe 3 or 4 rounds, no more than 4 rounds, though, in that fight. All right? But I feel like Haney is going to be, really going to Loma's body. I seen some in his training footage of him hitting the bag, and I feel like he's going to be putting more power down in this fight here. I think he's going to be going to Loma's body. I think what he needs to do is when Loma starts to crowd him, he needs to fight, dig to his body, make Loma uncomfortable. Because the thing is, it's like the way Loma fights, he's constantly looking for a way in. Because he's usually fighting taller, rangier guys since he's been at 135. So he wants to get in. And it seems like, whenever you tie him up or whatever you clinch or whatever you hit him, land a good shot, he aborts and then steps back out and starts again. He doesn't really like to stay in there and just trade most of the time unless he's feeling desperate. All right. But that's what you got to do. Make Loma uncomfortable. So when he does get in, keep him on the end of your jab. But when he does get in, make him uncomfortable. Being that you're the bigger guy, be physical. Tie up, clinch if you have to. Don't let him get combinations off. And then when he hits you with a shot, he might step back and reset, but he's gonna come right back in. Don't get overwhelmed. Duck underneath those shots, pivot, step out of danger. Get back to a that's what Ortiz was doing. You get hit with a shot, just boom, just make a move and start over. Don't let Lomachenko just overwhelm you like he did against Luke Campbell or Comey or some of these other guys. You gotta wake back up real quick. He hits you with a shot. Do whatever you gotta do to cancel Lomachenko. All right, because he's a rhythm fighter. Gotta cancel him out and start over, and make him and then work behind that jab. All right. Another thing is use your feints. Use your feints. Do everything that we normally. Devin Haney is great for that stuff. All right. He's great for feigning and just jabbing and changing levels and stuff like that. He does it too. He moves great. Do all of that stuff, all that technical stuff to throw Lomachenko off. Do it, because you don't want him to come in. You don't want him to be comfortable like Joseph Diaz was. All right. So with that being said, another key thing. I don't know how the ref is going to do with Haney, because I don't know if Haney is going to be tying up a lot. Those shoulder bumps, creating space, that's one of those things where I think Haney should do, but the ref can step in and say, no, not do it. Stop it. Same thing with tying up. And I meant to make this point with Loma earlier. Like, if there's a lot of tying up involved with Loma, whatever, because it could be one of those things where Haney can continue to hit you on the outside, and whatever you get on him, he can tie you up. If it's going to be one of those fights, Loma complains to the ref. I mean, this is all about winning. So don't let someone that's doing somebody's doing something to you, like tying up and holding on to you. If he's holding on to you and locking you up, I would complain, because a ref can warn Devin, and then Devin will have to be forced to fight you straight up, which he should anyway. I mean, Devin Haney should be going into this fight wanting to fight and mix it up with this guy. But if there's a lot of tying up going involved, or if Devin Haney is ducking and then using that shoulder to create space to get Loma out of there, pushing him back, we've seen Jermaine Ortiz do it. Don't allow it to happen. If it's a point where he's tying up to a point that Guillermo Rigondeaux was doing, fight out of it. Don't get comfortable with someone holding on to you. This is for Lomachenko. But for Haney, if it's a strategic move, make it work for you. Whatever fighter we're talking about. For Haney, if he has to do it, do it. But for Loma, if Haney's overdoing it, then you obviously got to do what you got to do to make it work for you. All right? Loma likes to charge in sometimes. Check left hook him. Check left hook him. I see Ortiz did it a lot. Check left hook. Catch him with the shot while you backing up, and let him, catch him as he's coming in, falling asleep at the wheel. Sometimes he's going to do it. And make him know that he can't just charge in and get his way. He needs to really force his way in and let him know that, remind him like, yo, if you're going to come into my space, I'm going to hit you with something, and overall, just push him back. Make him go fight backwards. Do not hit him with a good shot and admire your work. Throw those combinations. You have to throw combos. Do not hit him with a clean shot and admire your work. Hit him with combinations, Act like, you're trying to get a stop. I mean, don't be reckless, but you got to fight the man. You got to let the judges know that you're not just landing more, but you're also being the aggressor, and for a good portion of this fight at least. All right, you are the bigger man. Act like it. Hopefully for him, he's not drained or anything, because we know he was looking drained going into the Kambosos rematch. And then one thing about Kambosos too in the rematch, the reason why I can't base that fight, even though I watched some of it. Kambosos was fighting as a southpaw, but he wasn't really fighting as a southpaw. He was switching to it just to throw Haney off, and just to throw him off. He was creating some angles at times, standing as a southpaw, but it wasn't really natural. It was starting to become very repetitive and easy for Haney to figure out. Haney, again, I'm not expecting him to use his jab as much, because he's fighting a southpaw on both of their lead hands. They're just going to be touching each other with that lead hand. But it's still going to be, the jab is still going to be there for sure. So this is my prediction. Lomachenko. I know a lot of people are basing everything off size. I don't think it's just size. I think it's Loma's age. I think he's 35 years old. I do think the athleticism is taking its toll, a little bit, because of his age and because of the wear and tear and what he's been having multiple surgeries, being in and out of the ring, phenomenal talent as an amateur. But when you start pro so late, you don't have so many years to give. and being that he's fighting bigger, fresher, very talented fighters, it's going to be harder. It's going to be harder. Nakatani, good win. Coleman, but when we're talking about Tio, Jermaine Ortiz, and now Devin Haney, this is when it starts to really show your age. And I felt like the Jermaine Ortiz, even though he performed good and had his moments, that was the first time I ever saw Lomachenko looking old. Just not the guy that I remember seeing, in the earlier years or the previous divisions. All right. And with that was being said, I think it still might be a country because I am picking Devin Haney to win a decision. And I think that the decision might possibly be controversial based on the way that it ends. I think Loma probably will finish strong. But I just think he's going to give way too many rounds early, Again, he's going to have his moments, but Devin Haney is going to be landing the harder shots. I think he's going to be more accurate. And I think Loma is just not going to do enough work until it really needs to count. And I think it's going to be a similar situation as Teofimo Lopez. I think Tio, his danger there was not only that he was doing a good job controlling distance, but he was quick and he was very powerful. And I think it was part of the game plan for Loma to take him on and drown him in the later rounds, which he almost did. But he gave away, he had to sacrifice too many rounds to do that. And I think in this situation, he's going to do the same. But the difference is, even though Haney don't have that kind of power, and I know a lot of people's argument is, does Haney has the power to keep Loma off of him? I think Haney might not have knockout power, but I think he hits hard, okay? Because he's been able to control all of the guys he's fought up to this point, So I think he has respectable power. I think you're going to see more of the power here. And I think that he's going to pick up enough rounds to secure. And plus, he's harder to beat in the later rounds because, unless he's drained or something, he should be able to look fine in the later rounds, all right? Because he's used to going to distance consistently and still fighting at a high level in the later rounds. I just don't think it's going to be enough for Loma, all right? Anyway, it should be a good fight. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, and smash the like button as well if you like the content. And I'll see you during the commentary in the next video. All right, peace.